Stories like crazy, because everyone has mental health, and everyone has a story, and sometimes they're crazy. Join Lori Lane Murphy and me, Adriana Prosser, as we talk about dealing with, struggling with, and managing mental health with storytellers who want to share their true life story. Get in the conversation with us and talk to us on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe on SoundCloud and iTunes. Now, let's smash some stigma. This week we caught up with Brie Watson, who's into improv, stand-up, sketch comedy, and is a live comedic producer. She's created improv shows called What If? Improvising Your Alternate Universe, and Guess Who's Coming to Improv? You can read more about that in her bio. But now I want to introduce you to my general anxiety sister. Here, give a listen.
I have generalized anxiety disorder, I guess. Let's start there. Yeah, let's do that. Let's get that started. So I was thinking about how to start. It's one of these things where it's like, do you remember the movie High Fidelity?
Yes.
Where John Cusack's like, what came first, the music or the misery? And I don't know if I want to apply that to like my own anxiety, because I don't know if I'm anxious because ever since I was a kid, I've been doing like, I've always needed to be like busy all the time, or if I needed to be busy all the time because of underlying anxiety problems, right? But since I was a kid, I've had anxiety, and my like to the point where my parents were like, "Should we send you to a psychiatrist?" Ooh, like a big like you're messed up, Brie. How dare you? I used to like pluck my eyebrows out and my eyelashes and my like the tip of my head here to the point where I had like a little bald spot going there for a long time, and now have a cow leg. So cow as a result. Anyway, I don't know why I'm getting all excited here. So just to say that like ever since I've been a kid, I've had anxiety. It wasn't diagnosed until way later in life, and it wasn't diagnosed until it started being like problematic, and I didn't realize that it was problematic until a couple things happened. So that's what I'll talk to you about today. So I went and lived in Europe for 2 terms of 6 months each in the years 2007 and 2008. So that's going back. I think some of your stories are more like, this happened to me yesterday. I'm like, no, 10 years ago. So it was a combination of different factors going on, but I started realizing that, like I would start having these episodes that I did not know what they were. I just knew that all of a sudden I felt ill and like I would faint. And that wasn't uncommon for me because I am the kind of kid who fainted a lot. So when I was young, I fainted. That sounds terrible, but I have this thing called vasovagal syncope, wow, which is a fancy nurse's word for when you get a needle, you faint. Right? So it's like an unconscious thing where if I get a needle, for example, my blood pressure just like, I can't control it. My blood pressure will just drop and I'm down on the ground. Like, I'm one of those people who, when you have to get blood, I'm like, can you lay me down, please? Or you're going to be picking me up off the floor later. So whichever you prefer. So having that knowledge or that experience, my anxiety manifested itself in a way that I became afraid that I was going to faint, or that I was worried that I was going to faint, or I felt faint. And because I had fainted so often as a kid, it was like a feeling that I was familiar with, which was like, okay, so my heart started beating fast, my breath, I'm not breathing as much, I start hearing that ringing in the ears, and then I knew the next step was, I'm gone for a couple minutes. Which is also similar to an anxiety attack, if anybody has had an anxiety attack, which I imagine you have, because that's why we're talking about mental health. So it's the end of my glorious trip to France, where I've been working at Vimy Ridge, and I'm loving life. I got to visit my brother over the holidays, who lived in Scotland. So I'm like living it up in Europe. All the while I'm like ending a relationship back home and starting a new one, and there's a bit of unfortunate overlap happening, and without knowing, it's affecting me a lot more than I thought it would. So it's like the last day, my brother takes me to the airport in Edinburgh, And we get on the airplane, and it's late. The airplane's late, and whatever. We had dinner a long time ago, whatever the case may be, whatever, right? So I I jump on the airplane. Finally, the airplane's ready to load us in, and I'm sitting next to the window, which is my preferred thing, because I like to look outside. And then we're in the air, we're flying high. It's a nice time. And then we're right about to descend. And all of a sudden I'm like, I do not feel good. Something is happening. I am going to faint. I'm going to faint. For sure I'm going to faint. So I'm like, no, just breathe, be cool. That whole thing. It's going to be fine. I do that for maybe 2 seconds. I'm like, nope, I'm going to faint for sure. So without telling my neighbor what's going on, and there's 2 people beside me who just rip off my seatbelt, and I'm just crawling over top of them, and I go up to the front of the airplane, which is the closest place I can find someone who's working there, like a flight attendant. And I'm like, I gotta tell you, I'm not feeling well. I think I'm gonna pass out. And he's like, okay, cool. Just sit down on one of those backwards flight attendant chairs. And that's the last thing I remember. Wow. When I came to, so I fainted. So it's this combination between having a legitimate fear of fainting, because I've done it before, and a panic attack, which is making me feel the way that, anyway, let me keep going. So I wake up, and my legs are up in the air. I'm lying on the ground on the airplane with my feet up in the air, and there's a woman pushing up against my legs. I am like, what the fuck is going on? Where am I? Because if you've ever passed out, when you wake up, you don't know where, you just assume you're in your bed. You just assume things are fine. You're like, oh, I just had a nap. And then you look around you and you're like, what the fuck? So the woman introduces herself. She's like, I work for the National Health Service. This is fine. I'm a nurse. And I'm like, great. Okay, all right. What happened? And I'm still at the front of the plane, so everybody on the airplane is just staring at me. I'm like, oh no, it's not this again. So it turns out I fainted. And in the meantime, it hadn't been that long, but they had started their descent. And apparently as soon as that happened, they had to stop the descent because they didn't know what was going on. I could have had a heart attack. Who knows, right? So they ended up putting me in a different seat, and they're like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, totally fine. And then they ended up landing the airplane. I had to stay behind. There was this beautiful Cockney man who was like, oh, you all right? And they had to escort me off the premises, which I thought was very nice, and then realized later that it was probably for legal reasons. She can't faint again when she's here, or we're in trouble. Then I went to my hotel, and I was kind of shaken up. Not just because what had happened, but also because I knew the next morning at 6 a.m. I had to fly back to Canada. I was like, I just fainted on an airplane. I don't want to do it again. But I was fine on my trip to Canada. I think it was, I don't even know. It was a mix of emotions and panic and all kinds of feels, and also I hadn't eaten. So anyway, I've been trying to how did that happen? Justify that, and the pressure dropping and that kind of stuff. How did that happen? So that was the in a story. Well, I'm French Canadian. We call this the élément déclencheur. What is it? The moment in a story where it just takes
climax?
off. Right before the climax, where it just takes off, where you're like, this is the intro to your story, right, and then let's take off. Yeah. So from that point on, anytime I got on a bus, for example, I was like, I'm for sure going to faint. This is horrible. I'm going to faint. I was living in Ottawa at the time. Anytime I rented a car, because I had my license. Anytime I rented a car, actually, when I came back, I was down in Niagara for a bit, visiting my parents, and whenever I borrowed their car, I was like, no, I was driving down a major 400 highway, and was like, I'm going to faint right now. I had to pull over, because I became convinced that any time I felt like I was going to faint, I would for sure faint. And that became problematic when I was driving a vehicle, because if I did faint, I could get into a number of collisions. I could hurt myself and others. So I basically, I used to love driving. I loved driving. So that was obviously a problem, because I couldn't drive for more than 5 minutes without starting to panic and starting to believe I was going to pass out. then finally I got my job back in Ottawa, and I would ride the bus, and I remember being like, every single stop coming up, I would be like, okay, I can get off at this one, this will be fine. Like, as long as you make it to this next stop without fainting, you're going to be fine. And I would do that the entire way to my work. And then I'd get to work and I'd be fine, but the same thing would happen on the way back. So that was just like the point that launched a bunch of things. And then also the point that made me realize a bunch of different episodes I'd had while I was in Europe were actually panic attacks. Like this one time I was at a Pizza Hut in Belgium, and I was like, I have to go to the bathroom right now, something's not right. It turns out it was because I was with my ex-boyfriend and I had feelings for a new guy, and I was like, everything in my life was coming down. It sounds so dumb that it's like, relationships made me panic. But yeah, that was like such a huge stressful time that really like knocked it out, or knocked it into gear, I guess. So eventually I was like, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep like hoping to make it to the next bus stop, which is at that point where I started seeking like mental health. I started going to a counselor and we started doing a bunch of like breathing exercises and some meditation and a whole bunch of different stuff. And I had to go to the doctor and say, hey, listen, I want maybe some medicine so that I can take the bus like a normal person. She started me with lorazepam, which for sure knocked me on my ass every single time I took it. I was like, so can I maybe get something a little bit more manageable so I can not sleep all day? And they put me on Cipralex, and now I am the biggest fan of Cipralex, and I have rediscovered my love of driving. In fact, I drove 2 hours to get here today. Yay! Smooth sailing. So that's it. That's my story.
Oh
that
my
I wanted to
God.
tell. I should mention... I should mention, like, maybe I should have at the beginning of the episode, because I told the story about fainting on an airplane once. Do you guys know who Cameron Algie is? Oh, you should talk to him. He's great. So he's an improviser who is responsible for the Improv for Anxiety program at Second City.
Sweet.
Yeah, and he's got his own classes that he offers, his own program that he offers to help people with anxiety through improv, through the wonderful joys of improv. Anyway, so he runs a show that's like improv for people with anxiety. And in one of the forms that we did, they needed a storyteller. I told that story, and a person in the back of the audience passed out. I was like, oh no, it's the worst thing that could happen.
I think you have the power. Maybe you're a witch.
Powers.
I shall make you faint.
You want to feel uncomfortable? I have that ability. But yeah, so that was my
I can
big
tell
moment.
my cohort here, Adri is going to jump out of her skin in a minute. Please comment.
I mean, I don't faint, but I definitely have panic attacks.
Right.
And you were saying, oh, I feel really dumb. They're always dumb.
I know, they're so dumb.
they're like little invisible Lego blocks of all of these little things that are just like pushing you off center, pushing you off center, pushing you off center.
Yes.
And then something fucking stupid happens, and then all of a sudden you're on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
The most prolific one was when the election for Trump came through.
Oh, God.
I don't know if I've told the story on the podcast yet.
No, you have to tell it, though. It's awesome.
So, it's so stupid, right? So Trump gets into office.
Yeah.
And I start having that I can't breathe.
Yeah.
I can't
the
see.
heart oh, yeah.
I go into the put your head between your knees airplane position, and I'm starting to hyperventilate. I'm starting to see stars, and I know I'm gonna faint.
Yeah.
And my partner comes over, puts his hand on my back, because this isn't the first panic attack I've had. What can I do? What is it? You know, and most of the time I back him away and just like, please, like, put a pillow so that I don't like hurt myself.
Right.
But this time I shouted at him, and I was like, I can't be a pilot! And he's just like, what? He's like, okay, baby, it's okay. You don't have to be a pilot. It's okay. I know you're not a pilot. It's okay. You're not a pilot. So I do this one was like a little mini blackout. I come back.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's fine. He's there with water, and he's like, so do you mind explaining why you're not a pilot? Because that isn't anything that's in this trigger zone.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah,
where did that come
Where
from?
did the, yeah.
And I was like, okay, Trump gets into office. Trump fucks us.
Yeah.
He makes World War III happen.
Yeah.
I am going to be infantry because I don't have 20/20 vision,
Yep.
so I can't be a badass pilot like all the women that I've
True.
read about in history. Like,
Yep.
I love those, the night witches that were in, like, the Ukraine and Russia that, like, use these, like, duster planes to, like, come in the night silently, so they call
That's
them night witches.
badass.
I know,
Yeah.
that's cool. Or, like, any of these other cool women that were just like, I'm gonna make ammunition, I'm gonna be a badass
Yeah.
pilot.
That was my grandma. She made ammunition.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Like, so cool. But as you sit here as my anxiety sister wearing glasses, possibly the same
No,
lenses.
I've
again.
definitely had that I can't be a pilot moment. Yeah.
Right? And
Like-
so that's what gave me my panic attack, is this really hard realization that I'm gonna die.
Yep.
Because I am going to be thrown into infantry, and I am going to be fodder for whatever Kim Jong-il is going to throw at
Yeah,
us,
that's a good
because of
point.
the
Yeah.
fucking stupid guy named Trump.
Uh,
And so in that moment, it was just like,
this harsh realization of epic end times proportion.
which was just like, and breathe. Nobody's, please stop. And
Yeah.
just like, where is this actually coming from? And like talking to my therapist of like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And she's just like, well, that's just a cataclysm.
For sure, it's always like a plethora of shit forming together. And I know mine was like, I'm gonna have to go back to Canada. I've got to find a job. I'm done school. I got to do all this other stuff. But then on top of it, it was like, boy trouble. You know, and I was like, oh, come on.
But that's the one that's in the forefront. That's the one
Yeah.
that your cognizant mind is willing to deal with, is the boy problem.
Yeah.
Rather than
Yeah.
the pile of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
and as human beings, I think we're always looking for an explanation.
For sure.
Always. When sometimes there just isn't.
Yeah.
And I think because sitting at the table here, we're three creative women, so of course Adriana is going to go right to not being a pilot, and of course Brie is going more trouble, and I'm coming up with some other. I tend to get like a Teletubby when I'm like, oh no, I got to, uh-oh. And that's how my panic generally starts. Mine is generally triggered because I have bipolar disorder. Mania is not the same as anxiety, but anxiety often triggers mania, and mania often triggers an anxiety attack. So the way crisis happens in my life. So if my husband had a stroke, for example,
Okay.
this summer, and when it happened, he has to accept that there will be 5 minutes of I can't be a pilot. There will be 5 minutes of banging into my son because he has an anxiety disorder, and we bang into each other. I'm trying to put my pants on. We're running in circles. Oh, and he's having a stroke, and he's calming us down. And then the dust settles, and then you say, okay, what do we have to do? And the anxiety for me always stays like a knot in my chest. Not so much the fainting, not so much that kind of stuff, but I always have to deal with things in the high energy panic first. Like it's almost like it has to happen that way, and it will ease off, and then I will think clearly. It's like the clouds part, but it has to always be, oh my God, we're gonna die. We're not. Okay, boom.
I think that was, that sounds familiar, except that when I was having panic attacks, the dust wouldn't clear. It would be like you're stuck in that, the headaches and the pounding and
So
the
very
like the
physical.
lights.
Eh?
Yeah.
Like did you have like the almost like the tunnel vision?
Yeah, absolutely,
Like,
tunnel vision. Yeah,
and
which is
whoosh in your
terrifying when
ears?
you're talking. Yeah, it would be the like, woo,
Yeah.
right
Ooh.
before. Yeah, oh yeah. And it started happening like all the time after. Like once I came back, I was like, oh, I need to make a phone call. Yeah, or I had to go get my health card, and then I just remember being like it was after a panic attack, and I just had this. For me, I feel it's very physical, and I would get really bad headaches immediately afterwards. And I guess it's because you're not breathing and.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah.
because your heart actually stops beating a little bit.
Yeah, or it
and-
slows.
Or it
Definitely
slows right
slow-
down,
yeah.
speeds up, slows down. It's no wonder that you can feel sick from
Yeah.
it. But, for better or worse, social media and specifically texting is the best thing ever for us anxiety folks, because we never have to make a phone call ever again.
Oh, thank God,
Please
yeah.
don't pick up, please don't pick up.
know,
I used to wait until I knew somebody wasn't going to be home, and then I called them to leave them a message, right?
Oh my God. Like, if people call me now, I'm like, who died? You know what I mean? Like, it has
seriously.
to be something huge. Like, a buddy called me the other day. I'm like, what do you want? Yeah, send me a text. What's happening? I don't need to know this.
You know, this is what's so, like, so funny to me is I enjoy, but I'm almost 50, right? So Adri is like 15 years younger than I am and a social media guru. And we have,
very kind.
It's true. She keeps trying to teach me, and I keep sort of gently pushing it back to her. She sent me messages before that say, I'm going to teach you to fish. Okay. And I push it back over. But we have all these really creative brainstorms via Messenger.
Yeah.
And do you know how many times I'm like, why don't I just call? She won't like that.
There was a joke on the TV show Community where they were texting to one of the characters, and they were just like, she's phoning us back. Why is she phoning us? Oh no, she's a child of the 80s. She'll use a phone as a phone. And I'm right on that brink.
You're right on
to
the brink,
use
yep.
to use my phone as a phone. And I definitely have subsections of people where, like, I clearly phone my mom.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And you phone your grandma.
Yeah.
Right? And when they use texting, and when my mom had to learn Skype,
Oh, God.
dear God,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I digress. I wanted to bring up the fact that there's so many things that you're saying that I feel so akin to, that I self-medicate by being busy.
Okay.
I'm constantly
Oh man, yeah, I can't
overwhelmed.
relax, which is
I cannot relax.
No, yeah, I can't.
No.
And I've recently, and I'm kind of like in this weird position in my life right now, where I've taken a year off my like day job. Mm-hmm. So I used to have like 8 hours a day of like busyness that I could, fill. But now I've taken a year off to pursue like artistic stuff and comedy and that kind of stuff. Just because if not now, then when?
Yeah, agreed.
But then I'm doing things like sleeping in and gardening, and I'm like,
Wow.
what's happening? I'm like, for the first time ever, my brain feels like calm and
But maybe you need that. Like, maybe you need a bit of in the beginning, a bit of a clear out.
yeah.
And then you start, because it is tricky when you don't have that 9 to 5,
Yeah.
as I don't. What the hell am I going to do
How do
today
you structure your time?
that is somewhat productive?
Exactly.
Right?
So now I'm starting to, like, at first it was like, I'm just settling in. This is fine. And now it's
Yeah.
like, no, I have to write this thing, and I want to work on this project, and I need to do this. How do I sort it all out? So it's like, for every moment of, like, relaxation, I then feel guilty for the work that I'm not doing.
All the
Yeah.
freaking time. I was just saying to Lori that I listen to books while I walk the dog because I tell myself I'm actively walking the dog.
Yeah.
So I can listen to this.
Yeah.
But I will never sit on that couch and read a book.
And read, yeah.
Like I have to read on the subway on the way to work because I'm going to work.
Yeah,
So I
so
should
you're-
use my time
Yep.
instead of sitting here staring at a stranger. I should read. And it's really difficult for me to relax.
Yeah.
Or that so-called magical do nothing.
No, there's no, I can't do nothing.
I can't
There's
do
no,
nothing.
how could, I could be like maybe 2 minutes, and then I'd be like, all right, what's
shoot me down.
happening? Yeah, let's do, there's gotta be something to, yeah.
See, and in a weird way, I wish I had a shot in the ass of that a little bit, because what happens, the way my illness works is my brain is extremely busy, but my body is not. So I have no trouble sitting on the couch. I may even lie on the couch and watch Maury Povich, and then, but my brain is going, get up, get up, get up. Go write something, go look at something, go run around the block, go. And I really, really want, and it's all, like, constantly I'm hitting a physical wall. And so that has to be, if not me, then who? I have to say, no one else is in charge of me. I have to get my bum off the couch and go and do these things because it won't happen. And for you guys, it's more, if not you, who is
I'm
going
gonna
to
get
say,
my butt on the couch
sit
and
the
just
hell
watch
down
something,
and put your feet up. Because I'm just picturing both of you sitting on it, and you, our listeners can't see, but I'm picturing you not even leaning into the couch.
Oh, for
Picturing you
sure.
sitting up, going, I'm
like-
sitting, what? I'm sitting.
I have like a tuck, the legs under
Yeah,
my seat.
but you're
and
ready.
But I'm still,
It
yeah,
counts.
it's like a leaning, a
like a-
forward leaning
All the
Oiled
time. I'm
cat.
always leaning on the fronts of my legs.
So you're ready to spring into
ready to
motion.
get up, always. And Jason's always pulling me, sit
Just
back,
like,
sit back. Other than the
relax.
fact that it's like, get out of the way, I can see TV. But also like, will you relax?
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And so much so that people who are close to me, they will book me in advance. They'll be like, we're going to go out to the movies in like 2 weeks. And like movies
That's
that
what
are,
I need.
right?
Yeah,
'Cause they
because otherwise,
understand.
otherwise I'm like, no, I can't see you for, I've got something, like, I'm
booked.
I
Solid.
have started with the fabulous art of the bullet journal. I don't know if you're familiar. So like add like already I'm an anxious person, and now I have this like very specific detailed system that
Yeah,
I'm
I've
like,
never gotten into
yeah,
that.
oh my god, I
But, like,
love it.
My Google Calendar is like,
Oh, yeah, I bet it's
color-coded,
impeccable,
And I know that
yeah.
I'm seeing Lori today from 2 to 3,
Yeah.
and then I'm seeing my best friend, from 3 to 4, and
Yep.
my mom, and blah blah. Because I have to schedule in people time,
Yes.
or else I will just work.
Yep,
Because
Yeah,
I need to
am-
be busy,
I 100% hear that.
and I hate it, but I love it.
Yeah.
It's this
Yeah,
really weird.
it's like my husband will be like, he'll come into my room, my office, and he'll be like, he'll just like hang out,
And
and
you're
just
like-
like look at me. I'm like, what the fuck do you do? What do you want? And he's like, I just don't want to see you. And I'm like,
Right?
That's
well,
nice.
you
Fuck
gotta
off.
schedule that into my day, like when it's not Dan time yet.
You're
you
not
know?
in there. I don't see you.
You get me right before bed. That's
Friday
it.
nights,
Yeah,
man.
exactly.
Friday nights with my partner is like hallowed. Like if
That's
if
great.
I do something that's not with Jason on Friday nights, I better have a damn good reason, and I have to let him know in advance too because of his own.
Yeah.
And-
Well, like my partner, in a way, it's like it's excellent, but it's also not excellent because he's the kind of person who never wants to go out. He's very introverted. He's an anyway, we've done the Myers-Briggs thing, and he's like the one that like
You were
wants
like-
to be alone and he doesn't like. So for me, I'm like, I'm going out and I'm doing all this crazy stuff, and he's like, cool. See you when you get back.
Oh my God!
And I'm
You are
like,
my exact carbon copy. Yeah,
it's
for sure.
and it's like, no, just like make me stay or something. Make me do
Yeah.
like
Block the door.
Yeah. What do you mean you're okay with that? But then which is good because it doesn't cause a conflict. The fact
Yeah.
that I'm like away doing shows and that kind of stuff all the
Yeah.
time.
You don't put that pressure on your relationship for
yeah.
him to be a tag along or whatever, right? Like, and we understand that, and
Yeah.
that's where the Friday nights came in. Was this contract with myself and my busyness that if I'm go for 6 days, I can spare an
You deserve-
evening.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
one evening is self-care.
And you should.
Yeah.
Because your relationship is a living, breathing thing. Right?
Yeah.
And you can kill it.
Not to say
as
that
we
I
know.
don't see him. The
No,
other
no,
day,
but I mean, when you...
But it's set
the
aside.
focus
and
is on that.
Yeah, at the very
On that.
least.
I mean him.
On that,
That's on
yeah.
him and our relationship and,
Yeah.
and that thing, and it took some time
For sure.
to make that something that's very in the forefront, right? Like that you realize that that's a thing that you need,
Yeah.
right? And that you shouldn't just be like, well, I live with you, I see you,
Yeah.
but that's not.
He
that's
does it
a
one.
roommate.
He does it one step more, where he'll be like, "Do you want to go visit your parents?" I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I completely agree. I completely agree that and that's also something that society's really pushing right now. That the state of busy. and that
Yes.
we're all too busy, and
Oh,
We
it's
glorify
true,
it, I'll
yeah.
tell you that right now.
But
We
yeah,
glorify
like
busyness.
when I was in France, like these people sit down to drink their coffee. You know.
They have a conversation.
Yeah,
They
no-
eat
or,
their food slowly.
or not, or they just stare at people walking by. You know,
like a psychopath.
Yeah, but it's part of their culture. There's all these psychos sitting down staring at people.
Looking at their phones? What?
I know, it's bizarre.
I got yelled at. So I went to Vienna
Yeah.
as part of my bereavement, and to just get out of this.
Yeah.
Right? And just go. And in Vienna, I got yelled at for being my phone on the
Good
table
save.
like this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Got me in so much trouble. They're like, "Are you expecting a call?"
Jeez.
No. Are you a doctor? No. Are you pregnant, or do you know somebody who's pregnant? And I'm like, no. Why do you
What's
keep
up
asking me
with
these
you?
questions? And they're like, why the hell is that phone out? We are here, and we made time for you. We are present,
I love it.
and we have said no to everything else except for you. Put that damn phone
Yeah,
away.
that's
Love
great.
it.
That's the solution to, what do they call it? Fubbing?
Yes. Yeah.
When you're like, oh, I'm very I'm sorry, what was it?
Right? I firmly believe that whether you have a diagnosis or not, we are breeding a generation, speaking as the mother of a grade 10, we're creating anxious kids.
Yeah.
Now, my son happens to have a diagnosis, but what I find interesting is the second he gets home, obviously, if it's ever out of his hand, he's on the couch, and for kids now, it's Instagramming. Facebook is nothing. No. They don't really Snapchat anymore. At least boys don't necessarily.
Well, you don't need to because you can do it on Instagram now.
Yeah,
right?
everything. They do everything. And boys take selfies too, a lot of them. But what I find very annoying is I'll be talking with him, and he can multitask. He hears exactly what I'm saying while Instagramming Toronto Maple Leaf information, like stats. And he'll be going, yeah, I heard you. And he'll answer me, and I'll go, you know what? I appreciate that you heard me, but I don't feel like you heard me, so put your phone down. And they shake. It's like, when can I get that back?
It's an addiction.
It is. And I'm not much better anymore either, but I think there's enough of the 70s in me to be okay with putting it away or being broken for a day.
Oh, God.
Broken,
what?
Yeah, exactly. But we are creating, we are glorifying busyness, and we are certainly, what's the word I'm looking for? We are encouraging it in our young people.
Yeah.
And so if you don't already have an anxiety disorder, get ready.
Yeah.
You'll get one.
Just
live.
Even like texting though texting is a source of anxiety. I remember one day like somebody wasn't texting me back, and I was like,
they hate me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
was like, something's wrong. Yeah.
Is tied to it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think being in the comedy world has sort of helped me in that regard, because that was when I had like a smaller network of people that I knew. So when somebody did text me, it was a big thing. Or if they didn't text me, rather, it was like something's up.
Yeah.
And now it's just
it's
like
not instantaneous.
Yeah, exactly. But now it's like, they're probably just busy.
Yeah, you gotta let some of that stuff go.
And also, I have Cipralex now, which is constantly helping me.
Awesome. So good to hear.
Oh my God, it's so good. The only there's some downfalls though that I've been noticing. I used to love going to Canada's Wonderland and amusement parks and that kind of stuff. But the thrill of a roller coaster is no longer the same anymore. I'm just like, I'll be fine.
It's a trade.
Yay! Right. So there's no moments of extreme joy fear,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was on Cipralex for a long time, but then when I got re-diagnosed or reassessed to come to find out Cipralex was the wrong medication for me. But with anything that's messing with your chemicals in your brain, there's a trade-off, right?
Right.
There's a trade-off for something. And I was saying to Adriana earlier, with all the medication that I'm on, you run the risk of questioning your moods constantly. Do I really feel this way? Or am I just, and I don't know what the answer is, but you got to find a way to figure that stuff out. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. You do have to it's okay, yeah. So I'm not for example, I won't cry as much, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because I remember this one breakdown when I was still in Ottawa. I just couldn't find my keys, and I was just crying, going crazy, which didn't help me find my keys.
No.
By the way, but yeah, now it's if something sad happens, I'm I would like to cry about this, but it doesn't seem like a reasonable thing to do, And it's
you just can't.
Yeah, exactly.
You just can't.
I was almost happy that I was sad the other day, because I love Tom Petty, you guys. I love him so much.
Me too.
And I was just I'm oh, thank you at the same time, because you're allowing this to come out. But also, what the hell? Come on!
Yeah.
A heart attack, people don't die from those anymore.
No, and yeah, okay, don't get me started.
I'm sorry, yeah, okay.
Well,
I'm still get angry.
You found a spirit animal in Brie.
She just said that she gets angry.
Oh.
How much more can this
I don't know. Why isn't your hair red?
It's dyed.
Is it? Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
It was great. Great conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Wonderful. Thank you, Anxiety Sister.
Yay! Woo! I feel like I found a kindred spirit.
And I'm a redhead. I can be your Anne of Green Gables.
Awesome!
Sweet.
Thanks for listening. If you want to join the conversation, and we hope you do, come find us on Twitter and Facebook. And you can subscribe to us on iTunes and SoundCloud. That's it, Stigma Fighters. And remember, your story isn't over yet, and we want to hear it.